we're now led to believe that climate and energy are completely inextricably linked, and that everything that concerns energy also concerns climate, which of course means that we never, in fact, examine any of the science behind the suggestion that either the climate is changing or that it's changing for the worse, or that we have anything to do with the fact that it is changing. And the area that I'm going to talk about now, which was an immediate announcement, you'd think of all the things they could have talked about, but the one thing that really that was pushed out hard was onshore wind, and a policy statement on onshore wind, which we'll just put on screen now, from the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, Levelling Up, and of course the Treasury, very significantly, because all this is about money, really. But within the policy statement on onshore wind, they say they're going to be delivering our clean power mission, and it'll help boost Britain's energy independence, save money on energy bills, support high-skilled jobs, and there we go, tackle the climate crisis. Quite how is something that they don't tend to articulate particularly well. Now, there's quite a bit of detail to go into here, which is very significant, but it does bear close scrutiny because of the ramifications. So what they say is that currently planning policy includes two tests set out in footnotes 57 and 58 to paragraph of the National Planning Policy Framework that apply to onshore wind. Together, they say that development can only be considered acceptable either A, in areas allocated in a development plan or through local development orders, neighbourhood development orders, and community right to build orders. This sets a higher bar than is set for other forms of development. So whilst that might seem out of kilter, in effect, in that it is making a special situation for wind turbines, that there is, of course, a good reason for that, which is their enormous stature, unsightliness, and all the infrastructure that's required to put them up and make them work. And then B, with the narrow exception of proposals brought forward by neighbourhood development orders and community right to build orders, where the proposal has proved community support. Well, how exactly is that accurately measured? In practice, this has often been interpreted to mean that any opposition means the proposal cannot be considered acceptable. So that's what they want to change. And they've gone on to say these policy tests no longer apply. The removal of these tests from planning policy means that onshore wind applications will be treated in the same way as other energy development proposals. Now, that should set alarm bells ringing. We've reported enough now on the approach to using vast tracts of land for, in particular, solar, battery energy storage systems, and in fact, specifically the issue of using best and most versatile farmland, which of course should not ever be part of the programme, but that's very much crept in. So they go on to say on the changes, that the extract they use, that they say that the planning authorities should now not require applicants to demonstrate the overall need for renewable or low carbon energy, and recognise that even small scale projects provide a valuable contribution to significant cutting greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is very significant. So the specific technology that somebody is actually intending to put out there doesn't effectively need to be audited at all, doesn't need to be examined, because it's simply the principle that using a technology that's generally recognised as being green or environmentally friendly or renewable is good enough, and therefore it should be allowed to go ahead. That's a terrible precedent to set, I would argue, a very dangerous one. And then the second point is they say that they will approve the application if its impacts are or can be made acceptable. Well, again, there's an awful lot of room for manoeuvre there in exactly what that might be translated to mean. But nevertheless, once suitable areas for renewable and low carbon energy have been identified in plans, local planning authorities should expect subsequent applications for commercial scale projects outside these areas to demonstrate that the proposed location meets the criteria used in identifying suitable. So again, effectively, that once the precedent set, people will be able to do more or less as they please. Now, the significant point to make with this is that they're trying to encourage new development, but of course they're at a stroke forgetting about all the wind turbines that do exist, and of course the sort of end of life process for it, which we see a great deal of inconsistency in. And we'll just look at a a paper from Scotland, the future of onshore wind decommissioning in Scotland. Of course, an awful lot of wind power set out all over Scotland over the last few decades, a lot of which is coming to what's regarded as end of life, and really what is the plan for that. And we have the national grid here effectively trying to fudge the situation and create a story that's really not quite true. So they asked the question, can wind turbine blades be recycled? And I've entitled this Not So Green, because they say that for a form of energy to be considered truly green, where it has a zero or less than zero impact on the environment across its lifespan in terms of waste and emissions, it's important also to consider its end-of-life environmental impact. So therefore, for wind turbines, what does that mean? Whilst it's partially true that some can't be recycled, manufacturers and operators are going to great lengths to ensure they are ultimately as sustainable as possible, finding ways to either recycle, reuse, or rebuild them using recyclable materials in the future. The subtext there is they haven't worked out how to do it, they're not doing it, and so things are basically being dug into the ground. Fibreglass, here we go. Fibreglass is not totally recyclable, it's non-biodegradable, made up of composite, which means it's extremely difficult to process at the point of recycling. Instead, it's usually discarded as waste at landfills or incinerated. Now, the key point with this, of course, is how does it actually manifest in the structure itself? But they'd go on to say that whilst they're treated as waste, not all of them are destined to landfill, and that some are finding innovative ways to recycle. But is that really the case? And I thought we'd just look at an article from Power Technology and describing it as wind's dirty secret, in which they say that the materials are problematic, and they get to the heart of it, which is effectively that having been designed to withstand extreme weather conditions, the epoxy resin is durable and difficult to break down. The tough coating makes it near impossible to separate the materials comprising a blade. Separating the fibers from the polymer using high temperature results in the degradation of the plastic parts and damage to the glass fibers. So the point with that is that because these fibers and coatings are over the other materials that might on their own be described as recyclable, they're not recyclable because of what they're covered in. So this is, again, as I say, making what they're calling clean power synonymous with climate change is effectively to completely duck the issue now with the changes in planning policy of whether or not something should go there in the first place because it does what it says it's going to do, and also how it can be disposed of. And if they're prepared to do this with wind, then we can consider that all the battery storage setups and all the rest of it's going to go all over the country will have the same sort of slipshod attitude applied.
Indeed. Thank you.